Welcome to the only daily podcast focusing on compliance news of the day. Each morning, start your day with a cup of coffee and Tom Fox, the voice of compliance, to hear about 4 of the top compliance, corruption, or leadership stories you will need to start your day. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network.
First, a word from our sponsor. March 26, 2022, the Data Transfer Edition. And we begin with that story from the Wall Street Journal as the U.S. and the EU reach a preliminary deal on the transfer of data across the Atlantic. They would allow data about Europeans to be stored on U.S. soil, heading off a growing threat to thousands of companies' transatlantic operations. The deal could be concluded resolving one of the thorniest outstanding issues between the two economic giants. It also assuages the concerns of companies like the company formerly known as Facebook, Google, and others who were facing mounting legal challenges to data transfer. If you've wondered about the difference in the Biden administration and the prior administration, this provides a prime example, as this would never have happened under the Trump administration. Due to their own ineptitude and corruption. Next up, also from the Wall Street Journal, a former Microsoft employee has alleged bribery schemes for multiple years by Microsoft in the Middle East and Africa. Microsoft said that it had fired some employees and terminated other partnerships in relation to the allegations made Friday by Mr. Yasser El-Abad, and he worked for Microsoft from 1998 through 2018 when he was fired. He alleged that Microsoft employees were engaged in widespread bribery schemes and detailed many of them. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens to Microsoft based on these allegations. Next up, and just unbelievable, it turns out that Clarence Thomas's wife, Jenny Thomas, supported the insurrectionists of January 6 and supported the illegal overthrow of President Biden's election. So the question now becomes, does the sitting justice on the Supreme Court, Clarence Thomas, also believe this? Thomas has made no comment on this, but this is incredibly bad news for Chief Justice Roberts and the Supreme Court, and puts the entire credibility of the Supreme Court at risk now. We should also note that Thomas did vote against releasing Donald Trump's presidential papers around this, and now we see the reason. His wife was involved in the insurrection, or at least supported it. And our final story comes to us from Fierce Wireless, first-time contributor to the Daily Compliance News, as Ericsson sees a rise in employees speak up after its corruption scandal. That can only be good news for Ericsson, which has been buffeted by continued corruption after they signed their initial deferred prosecution agreement and the failure of Ericsson to meet the deadlines of its DPA. But at least people are feeling confident and trusting enough to raise their hand and speak up. So kudos to Ericsson employees. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network and a proud member of C-Suite Radio. Thanks so much for listening. I hope you'll join me again tomorrow.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.